The reframe is, instead of looking at what fires can I solve and how fast can I solve them, it is, what is the constraint that is preventing me from growing this organization, and how can I attack that one constraint? And the one thing that if you solved it, you would move up to the next level, and then you'd hit the next thing. And then you solve that, you move up to the next level, and you do the next. So the best exercise that I do with companies is, whatever their size is, I'm just like, okay, if you got 50% more clients in a burst tomorrow, what would happen? What would break? What would be the problems? What would happen, right? And as soon as you ask that question, it's immediately, oh, we couldn't fulfill all of them. Okay, why couldn't we fulfill them? It's like, oh, our warehouses are big. And it's okay, so you would need to buy warehouse space. Do you have people for those warehouses? No, we'd need more people for those warehouses. Okay, what is your defect rate? If you scaled that and you also scaled your bad reviews, would your bad reviews become overpowering? If so, that means that there's some defects to handle there, right? And so that's where you really start to find the opportunity space. So my name is Isaac Hicks. I'm the founder and CEO of a company called Autonomy. In Autonomy, we've spent the last 5 years working with mid-market and enterprise customers, building custom AI-based software solutions. So a lot of custom operational workflows, a lot of things that are around kind of total business process automation, going above and beyond those point-wise solutions and really making something that's very holistic, very durable, something that many people might touch.
Well, the fact that you started a business, which I'm assuming, when did you start this business? Just so I can get perspective on like the timeline here. And
Yeah, absolutely. So it was February of 2021 was when we filed the initial paperwork, but we really didn't start taking off until about year 2, year 3.
let me guess, like when like Claude Sonnet 3.5 came out, or
No, so what was interesting is we got into the scene a little bit before the whole attention is all you need, ChatGPT, that whole big unraveling. So before that, it was really just that I was like a freelancer doing things on my own, and I was building custom AI solutions. So like back when you had to design neural nets from scratch. And so I was making like perceptrons, making regression analysis that was AI based, doing very basic sentiment analysis based on limited vocabulary, but there wasn't really the whole attention is all you need transformer yet. And then, of course, once that came out, and then, of course, when the initial Chat GPT dropped, that's when the industry got a lot more attention. So it was much more of a very niche data science type of topic until then. And then as soon as Chat GPT dropped, it became very mainstream.
okay. So you keep mentioning this phrase like attention's all you need. What is that from? Is that like your line, or is that from like what's the thought leadership behind that?
Yeah, I guess this is some deep in it AI lore for people who are maybe less familiar with the space. Chat GPT and all GPTs, right? So GPT stands for, I actually forget what it stands for off the top of my head, but it's a generative pre-trained transformer, right? And so what this came from is this idea of a transformer. This is a very specific architecture that was really the birth of this idea of being able to do natural language processing, natural language generation. And so attention is all you need is the paper that was published by Google that was like the groundbreaking, that was like the eureka moment of natural language processing. And so that's really the ground zero of where everything that we're seeing now started.
Okay. So that's the title of the Google paper, and attention's all you need. Does it mean like all you don't have to have data science like knowledge to get an output from the system, or like attention from what? And sorry, uh I'm anchoring on this because I'm
Margaret,
like, oh, I think like there's something very like powerful of the one, like a decisive statement like that, where I think there's like something like a real powerful insight.
no, absolutely. So it's crazy because this is actually not very well known anymore, not very talked about, but this was like the event. This was the biggest thing that happened in the industry. It was the beginning of the industry, really. And what attention in the transformer architecture, which we're getting really in the weeds now, but quick background before we get into that, because there's a little bit of catching up to do. So the way that artificial intelligence works at all is you have a series of nodes that are very similar to the synapse in your brain, right? And each of these nodes has a weight and a bias. And so what happens is an input is received, and then there is a series of these neurons. They're organized in different ways, and the output is going to be at the end of the system. And it might select one answer, it might select between a multitude of answers, or it might generate a longer form answer, right? And that happens because what happens is there's an input, there's a series of neurons, and then there's an output. And that's what all of AI is, right? And what happens is whenever you train the intake and then you train the response, whenever you push a bunch of data through that, you train the system to, if you receive an input like this, you should get an output like this. And that's what the concept of training and creating an AI is. Now, before attention is all you need, before this groundbreaking paper and before transformer architecture, what we had is we had very basic layer-based systems. And so how a layer-based system works is you have, like, maybe there's 10 neurons here, and then 6 neurons here, and then 4 neurons here, and then there's the output, right? And so that would be the structure that learns. Now, what they did with transformers is they created an encoder-decoder system, and then they put what are called attention heads on that system. So what happens is an intake is received, and then that intake is encoded in a certain way so that the attention heads, which these are very specific neurons that are laid out in a very specific way in the system, those are able to figure out what neurons on the other side need to be hit in order for the decode to give you the response that you're looking for. And so the way that a large language model works is based on this architecture, because what happens is you assign every single word, or technically they're tokens and they're like portions of words, but that's getting really into the weeds. But every single word has a very unique address in this kind of like artificial space called the embedding space. And now we're like getting really out there now. But in the embedding space, there is an address for every single one of the words in a language, right? And so what happens is that address in embedding space is the input that goes into the neural net. And that address is coded in such a way that whenever you send a specific series of addresses in, you're going to get a specific series of addresses out. And the length and the number of addresses that you get out, those are going to correspond to different addresses, and those different addresses are going to be different vocabulary points. And so the embedding space is the transition between actual language and then like the machine language. And so the encoder is what takes in natural language and puts it into this embedding space. And then the decoder is what takes the output that's in the embedding space and brings it back to natural language. And that is the concept of the transformer, is the transformation into the machine language to be able to do that calculation. And so that was really the Rosetta Stone between humanity and the machine.
Okay, so transformer equals Rosetta Stone. I think
Yes.
that's a really good distillation of what happened, is that there's a technology that knows the lexicon of natural, like human language, is able to convert it into machine syntax and then bring it back in natural language again. And
Yes.
now normal like English syntax, and I guess Chinese, have been seeing like Kimi model hallucinations and perplexity, like outputs where it just goes Chinese, and I'm like, whoa, what happened? But yeah, like I think like so if the attention's all you need is, okay, we effectively discovered the Rosetta Stone, which has enabled us to interact with machines in a more natural way. Thank you for diving into that. I think it's an incredible insight that, like, historically, and I'm not gonna geek out about history, it's like the Rosetta Stone was a big deal in like human history. So I think this is big as well. So now I'm gonna bring it back.
And
Yeah,
we got really deep in there. Sorry about that.
yeah, but I'm a fan of lore, so it's all good. The for anyone that tune out, come back. Like we'll make it a little bit more a higher level. But now, like when I was preparing for this episode and like looking at your business and like what you're doing, and I immediately thought back to all the like internal tools projects I did before this Rosetta Stone moment, and the just the pain of helping operations. Because I felt as like a product person, a product designer, there's only so much you can do within the product department, engineering teams to make the business succeed. And a lot of problems are just people problems or operations problems. A lot of businesses that do have like product teams aren't like technology businesses in the sense that they're selling licenses, that there is like a operational fulfillment aspect to the process. And what like the thought that occurred to me when I was looking at your materials in preparation for this interview is the concept of, hey, what kind of product strategies are available now that like we could potentially productize ops like easier, faster without needing to pay a bunch of money on Salesforce or like these big legacy ERP systems and these insufferable, like I'm just going to take a position like the Salesforce admins that don't actually provide, like overpromise and underdeliver. Like now, like it's the only limits your creativity. What have you noticed since AI got good that like you were able to start doing? What have your clients been able to start doing with these advances in technology?
Yeah, so a lot of the work and a lot of the work that makes that kind of under promise over deliver type of situation, or yeah, the other way. And a lot of that is because of the sheer amount of just tedium that you have to go through to get anything done. Because if you think about, say, interacting with Salesforce, you're going to put in a new record and say, okay, I have to pull up the form, I have to fill out the form, I have to make sure that the prospects getting put in the right workflow. I have to make sure that the workflow is actually a match for what this prospect is. I have to make sure that if there are going to be automations that are associated with that, that all of those automations are appropriate. And I have to understand what this layout is, this very custom system that has been set up. And this is just to put in a prospect, right? And so what AI has really enabled us to do is in a lot of these very tedious, very surgical places, we can completely automate away what used to be maybe 5 minutes of work here, 10 minutes of work there, but it's 5 to 10 minutes of work that gets done dozens of times a day by dozens of people, hundreds of people, thousands of people, maybe in your organization, right? And so if you have thousands of people who are spending 2, 3 hours a day filling out forms, sending out routine emails, checking certain records to make sure that certain things are validated, et cetera, et cetera. You're talking about tens of thousands of work hours that are being spent. Now, not only is that a cost problem whenever you look at the highest levels of the organization, but that's also just a morale problem. Somebody who's spending 2+ hours a day doing that kind of thing, do you think they like that? Are they likely to stick around? What's your employee attrition look like? So there's really levels to it, but I would say that the core ethos is just being able to get rid of those really tedious things that nobody really wants to do in the first place, but you have to do. And now you can automate those.
Yeah, when I like am talking to people, people will be disrupted, like full stop, like by this technology. People's whole careers have been built around this tedium. They've built moats around, hey, I'm willing to do like the schlep work for you. And maybe not even that good, but still, it's so hard. It's necessary. There's like their data entry, transformation roles. Like, I think the most, I'm just going to say it, it's the one of the most hilarious examples is like finance people using like something like Alteryx to pull and transform data using Python. Like, these are people with like master's degrees that, and they're glorified like data entry transformation folks with like post grad and like student loans to just do data entry when they could be like they have the capability to be more strategic. And yeah, like in the short term, yeah, there's going to be people who like if they insist that like their whole identity is around this drudgery and that like they don't want to like relearn. They're like, yeah, like the maxim I use is like AI I don't know who I found it from, but whoever made this, thank you. Like AI is not taking away jobs, taking away excuses. And my addition to that is it's the people with the most excuses that are going to lose their job. You don't have an excuse anymore. This takes too long, or this will be too hard. It's no, just go burn some tokens, ask AI to make a plan, figure it out. Like you don't have an excuse anymore. And so go try to solve these bigger problems. I like I don't really like I empathize, but it is getting so good. It's where that's going to happen. But the reason I bring that up is that they didn't. No one ever wanted to do that work in the first place.
Yes, absolutely. To your point, I think that's a really powerful point that it's like AI getting rid of excuses, but I'm really an optimist about the whole AI thing because there's kind of two ways you can look at it, right? There is the okay, AI is going to come and displace a bunch of jobs, and what are these people going to do? And oh my God, all these jobs are going to be displaced because companies are going to fire all of their people and unemployment's going to skyrocket. And what about the working man, right? So there's that perspective, which that perspective gets a lot of traction. I think it has a lot more traction than it deserves. And the reason I think it has more traction than it deserves is because it's a fear, uncertainty, doubt. It's works well in news cycles. It's going to get the views. It's going to get the clicks, et cetera, right? But the other side of it, the optimistic side, and the side that I lean on is it is in a business owner's best interest to instead of just thinking short term and trying to operating expenses by getting rid of employees, if you are already making more money than you are paying an employee, which I mean, that is what employment, that's how it works, right? And so it's if those are already profitable workers, how much more profitable could they be if they were doing more meaningful work? How much more could you accomplish? How much more market share could you have? How much more productivity could you get as a business owner? And business owners are incentivized to solve that problem, that specific problem, because it is more efficient to repurpose labor that is already a culture fit, that is already aligned, that you can already trust, than it is to try to just get rid of people and then bring on systems that aren't proven, that you have to figure out yourself or hire somebody to implement. It really doesn't make a whole lot of sense to do it that way. And that's something that we really push a lot of at Autonomy is because we'll go in and we'll do pretty major work that we might get rid of thousands of man hours of labor by the time we're done of something. But that doesn't mean that those people just do nothing now. What else could they have been doing? What's that backlog of work? What would have taken you a year that you can now do in 2 or 3 months? That's really the perspective I like to take on it.
I really like that perspective because even before AI, there's always been more work than there's resources and headcount to tackle. As a designer, like notifications and email like notifications and like a content strategy around like how are we going to communicate to people about certain things that outside of the application, that's always been like an afterthought. And now it's like getting to a point where I'm like, there's always been more work to do. And even if like you hire more people, there's still always more work to do. It's just like the game's gotten bigger, right? Like the stakes have gotten higher, the scope has gotten bigger. Like even at big companies that I've worked at, the there's always things that we're like, wow, this is like table stakes stuff, and we're not doing it well because we even with all these people we cannot seem to have the bandwidth to tackle this thing. And I used to be like something I've been wrestling with guests on this, like not with guests, but like it just as an idea that I've been wrestling with is like, okay, well, the easy explanation is like, oh, like the borders on like product teams or even like teams across like multiple disciplines and job families are going to get, I would say like you're blending and like the lines are getting blurry and stuff, which I'm like, oh, well, maybe like the popular thing right now is like PM should be making prototypes, which I'm like, we have a job family for that. That's the design function. Like we don't like that. Just because you can do it doesn't automatically give you the responsibility like of a designer to like figure out how the UX should go. And then like just because a designer can write PRDs now doesn't give them the accountability and responsibility it's like you get all the like capabilities to do something that's someone else's job, but like you don't have like the downside, which is I think pretty bad. By the way, it's like if you can't be held accountable for it, you shouldn't do it.
Yeah.
Um, but now I've gotten to this insight, and I think you've really like refined this perspective. Is like no, the product manager, the job doesn't change. It's just you get to think bigger now. Like a lot of like
Mhm.
product man because software and like automations have been hard to do in the past. And I'm also, I would say like business owners and operators, right? Because of this technology, it doesn't change what the responsibility is of an entrepreneur, a business owner, and a product manager. It's like, no, just like new strategies are becoming possible and you could go on offense now. And I think that's like the new wrinkle you just gave me.
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say that one of the biggest things that's changed with AI is that it allows everything to be a little bit bigger. And there's positives to that, but there's also negatives, right? Because your strategy gets to be bigger. Your ambitions for what you're trying to accomplish in a certain period of time gets to be bigger as well. But mistakes are also bigger. And that's something that I see a lot of, especially since the space is very nascent, is I work with a lot of companies who have, they say they tried to do the AI thing. And I say, okay, what did you do? And then once you get to talking to them, it's that their logic was in the right place, but there were fundamental assumptions that were off. And like one of the most common ones I see, and this is something I'm very vocal about, is people are trying to use AI in marketing all the time. And it's okay. You can use AI in marketing if you're trying to make some interesting new creative, increase the number of creative pieces that you're testing on your ads, increase the amount of through lines that you're testing on your ads, doing stuff like that. But what you can't do is you can't use AI to drastically increase the amount of direct outbound you're doing because direct outbound doesn't work that way. Direct outbound is about the quality of the offer and the timing. So if you want to automate with the acquisition of the signals, the research to understand if somebody is in the right timing to reach out to, then that will work. But if you're trying to scale from 1,000 cold outreaches a day to 20,000 and do some kind of personalization, the AI based personalization is pretty transparent. We all know what that is. We can all see it. The person who's trying to do that can see it whenever they get it too. They get the same outbound email. So it's like, what does that work on you? Why would it work on other people then? Oh,
Oh, yeah, I get a ton of guest outreach. I actually do have a skill that I use to like filter like, does this sound like this is too like over personalized? Like it's like the over personalization is like a huge tell because it takes the human hours it takes to do that used to be impressive. Now it's like it's too easy to like have it run a research on all your sources and make this hokey like, oh, I really liked this episode. Like the insight really was interesting and like that those automatically get filtered out like in my like in my inbox because now I'm just
mhm.
like, hey, like actually what sounds it's more, I guess, like earnest and sincere that they're reaching out, which kind of shows like they're respecting my time that I was generating content that I have to like parse through and stuff like
Yeah.
that. Like yeah, a real example because it actually just came to mind. It's just, oh, it's yeah, like I really like this episode. The insight on this thing was like super like fascinating. By the way, I have this guest, and then I'm like, yeah, that's AI. Straight to jail.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and it's funny too because the definition of what effective outreach even looks like has completely changed because for a long time, like when it was new, it was as easy as just doing like the spray and pray method. Spray and pray worked in the early 2000s. It works like dynamite. Anybody who could figure out the email infrastructure, man, you could just print money off the back. It was crazy. And then that became more prevalent. It became more about, okay, there's a lot of competing offers. What's good offer design? And then we had the wave of personalization, but now we're going back to offer design. And I actually think that's probably the best thing that could happen because offer design is the thing that actually matters. Because if you can make an offer that is good for the market, you should get ahead. And you have to really understand what the market is and you have to really believe in what you're doing because a lot of the time what a really good offer sounds is something that genuinely has no risk for the other party. And you're taking on all the risk yourself because you know that your secret sauce is that you figured out to get around that risk and make it work anyway, right? And I think that's an overwhelmingly good thing. I really am very bullish about that.
Yeah. So like your point is it just comes down to creativity, right? Like how do you frame your offer? If you framed it correctly and then you get that in front of the right people, you should be making money. Like I've heard that multiple times. It just comes down to creativity now. If you're not blocked by like technical competencies and it's just like people are just going to lose through a lack of imagination. So it's the people that like have the creative like muscle refined and know how to tell a story. They're the ones that are going to win. And you don't necessarily need to spam and do volume anymore. You could just sound authentic and real and show up in the right market segment locations.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I completely agree. But to tie this kind of back to the whole AI workflow enablement thing, it's these kinds of discussions where you're talking about offer design, where you're talking about the logistics of how to get something done and how you can make things more logistically sophisticated. That's really what AI enables because if you are say, at the management level of an organization, you're a manager, you have a team of people underneath you. Maybe your organization is like a mid-sized company, 200, 300 employees, and underneath you, you have, say, 10, right? So if you're in this situation, what you were doing previously is you were looking at your 10 employees and you're like, okay, how do I make sure that everybody's on track? How do I make sure that I need to make them report up to me in some kind of way? I need to be able to look at the reports that they give me. I need to be able to be the escalation channel whenever something happens that they can't really take care of. And a lot of your job was around managing that tedious logistical issue. Once that tedious logistical issue is gone, it's okay. What do I need to do personally to move up in this company? If I had the best team and my team was delivering at rates that are beyond other similar teams in my organization, then I would be the obvious choice to move up in this organization. So, how can I make that happen? Currently, our response times are an average of 11 minutes to get back to somebody. Could I have some kind of ping and then a round robins to somebody so my response time goes down to under 60 seconds? If my response time is under 60 seconds and the company average is 11 minutes, people are going to be asking how I got it down to that. They might put me in charge of everybody if I do that. And then that allows that manager to think about how can I get to the next level. And doing that, they're taking the entire company because the entire company is going to adopt that. And that's where the magic is, in my opinion, is in stuff like that. Because if somebody is personally empowered to pull themselves up and then they're able to pull everybody else up with them, it doesn't matter if you're the owner, if you're director, manager, if you're the entry level guy, anybody who's doing that is going to get recognized. They're going to get rewarded for that recognition. And then what they did is going to become ubiquitous across the organization. And that is the real ground truth of how a company moves forward like that.
Yeah. And I mean, the old way of like trying to do that outcome, there's a really great essay called Glue Work, which is written for like engineers and stuff. And it's like that glue work's important, but like the risk of doing glue work is that you're never hired to do that glue work in the first place. And so if you're spending time doing that, then you're not doing your core job. And then the people that like weren't helping with the glue work aren't necessarily like moving the needle for the org, but they're a really great programmer, for example. They get promoted and you suffer because you were doing the right thing. And now it's kind of flipped where it's like you can use AI to like help with this glue work. And looking at like your offer for your company, which is like there's no like automation's super powerful and the technology has been affordable and available for a very long time. It's always been there, but there's never been someone held accountable for it. And so like anyone that actually does it, it's like a side project to their real job. And as soon as that person leaves, that system blows up. Like, how did you discover, I guess, that insight? How were you able to articulate it so like precisely? Eh,
Yeah, back before I was an entrepreneur, whenever I was, I'm an aerospace engineer by trade. And then I decided that I didn't really want to pursue that career path further. So I got into business consulting. I was working in Big Four business consulting. And it's funny because no matter what the project was that was sold, no matter what we were staffed to, because my job was specifically to help manage software migrations and technology transitions in an acquisition, right? I was like kind of part of the team that was responsible for the technology transformation. And the biggest thing I would see is that a lot of the time, the problems that the organization was having and the things that just you're a company that just got bought. A lot of the employees in that company, they don't want to deal with having to do all of this new stuff. They don't want to have to mess with all of that. It's, oh, great. Somebody 4 levels above me made a bunch of money. So now I have to do a bunch of crap, right? That's their mentality. And a lot of that sticking point, a lot of the thing that made them so bitter and so aggressive and not wanting to move to the new thing is that they had so much pain in what they were doing, but at least it was a pain they knew. But because they knew that pain, they're just looking at the future and they're like, oh, so I have to learn a whole new bag of crap that I have to do now. Are you serious? And that was like where the gripe came from, was that, right? And if you get meta with it, you can also look at, okay, so if that's how they feel during the day, what are they doing outside of work? What's their family life like? How are they interacting with strangers? What is that doing for society at large whenever you have a bunch of people who are going through their lives just frustrated with the crap that they
Yeah.
have to do day in and day out, where they just wait to do crap all day, right? And I guess I saw an opportunity to both fill a market need and just remove all the crap that was in people's lives, because it just makes life so much better when you don't have to spend hours doing that mind numbing, soul crushing. Oh, I'm going to design a spreadsheet for 6 hours. Who wants to do that? Nobody wants to design a spreadsheet. Are you kidding me? I thought it would be a good thing to do to just help people stop doing stuff like that. And then through that process, I've learned a lot of things.
Yeah, I was that person that was I don't think I ever liked doing it, but I saw it as a need, and I was the guy that was like, "Okay, I'm gonna make this spreadsheet to alleviate pain and provide value and stuff." And I do and maybe you resonate with this. It's like a very, I'd say, industrious, entrepreneurial person has a high pain tolerance, and maybe that's like how we provide value is we're like, "Cool, we're able to do the crap work in exchange for, like, money," right? And so I got very familiar with a ton of different frameworks for analyzing. I was the framework guy, and it just became part of my personality. But then as soon as AI got good and I could create skill files and stuff to automate the framework, and I could just input stuff and it evaluated information in the way that I would evaluate it, like heuristically, I'm like, I never want to do this in the first place. This is great though, because now I know all the frameworks, and so I get to create a bunch of agents and all that stuff. But it's yeah, it's why I'm like so optimistic to anyone that's listening. That's, oh no, well I have a job. What's the stuff that you wanted to do, or you felt like, hey, we should be doing this before we had these capabilities. We should be spending time doing this. I shouldn't be in these meetings. I shouldn't be like writing another report to my manager and like spending like a day or two trying to fill this template out for reporting, right? Or, oh, great, a new VP came in. They like this system over this system. Now I need to learn how to fill out this form. Because that's like most digital transformation is like, how do you get a bunch of people to fill out CRUD interfaces like
Mhm.
Salesforce or like NetSuite, right? It's just tedious work that no one cares about. And what I've really been enjoying, I'm like so grateful to be just in the prime of my career when all this is happening is, oh, cool, automate my report to my manager. Oh, automate decision log and entries. Now I have all this time to be creative. Like all the corporate crap that makes a corporate job suck, it doesn't suck anymore. Yeah, like a corporate job can be palatable because it's like the expectations are so low on, oh, I just need this memo so I know what's going on as a manager. Okay, cool, here you go. And they're like, this is good, great, awesome. And you feel like you're cheating a little bit, but yeah, it's do you see like all the Do you think more and more people are going to just stay at companies now and not become entrepreneurs because it's, oh, you could actually deal with all that crappy stuff now at a company? Yeah, that's why I'm wondering that.
I don't think so. My little corner of the universe is definitely very entrepreneur forward. I might be a little bit
Yeah.
biased, but something that I was doing before I got into really specializing in the middle market, helping people with acquisitions and doing stuff like that, is there's a whole kind of subsection of society that are the ambitious guy who's in the company. But instead of looking at, oh, I could use this to get ahead in the company, they see, oh, this is a problem for me. And I know it's a problem for everybody like me. And there's tens of thousands of people like me. So I could be the guy to build the thing and sell it to these tens of thousands of people. Right. And after being in that market, I can tell you that there are so many people. If you have a legitimate technical skill set and you want to just start making money on the side immediately, just tell people you'll build their ideas. And oh man, you will have a line out the door, like all the way to the city limits, man. Like everybody and their mom wants somebody to build their idea. Now, there are reasons why that's not the best market to be in and why I'm not currently in that market myself. But if your goal is, I would like to make money on my own and not be reliant on a company, that is the golden. You can have a contract for 10 grand a month in 2 weeks from now if you just start telling people that's what you're doing.
Yeah, so you're saying there's a lot of like sleeping giants that they're capable of doing their own thing, but like in the old way, it's like, oh shoot, I mean, I made that attempt before AI got good, and I'm like, I felt like I was spending more time doing bookkeeping than actual sales, and I'm like, I don't have any time to do sales. And if I hire a bookkeeper, they don't really do the work. They just like I tried it, like they make you do all the work, like still, and they're just like organizing it. I don't know. And now it's like, I mean, I know someone that securely using 1Password's API, like they connected Cloud Code to their business bank account and created like like a runway like CFO agent through Cloud Code to like do runway calculations. And now I'm like, oh, like all those pain points I had that like made me feel like, hey, maybe I'm not like cut out for this. I don't know. Like, it kind of sounds like if you know how to like find the right, skill files on the internet and like repurpose them for your needs, like a lot of that admin stuff that made being an owner operator suck, it doesn't really like exist anymore.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we're in a very specific window right now. And I think this window probably exists for maybe the next 3 to 5 years. And then the window is going to shut. But we're in a window right now where there is a massive gap between the rate of advancement of artificial intelligence and the rate of adoption. And because there is that gap, it is very easy to become the person who knows enough and is able to be the guy who can serve the people who are on the adoption curve because it's easy to become skilled enough to be able to provide real legitimate value to the people who are in the adoption phase. And the people who are in the adoption phase and are not going and learning how to do this themselves just don't have the time, bandwidth, et cetera, to figure out how to do it themselves. And their time is valuable enough that it's actually worth it to them to just pay somebody else to do it. And what's something that's really interesting that I learned in my career, and everybody says, oh, yeah, solve rich people problems, they pay better. So the trick to that, right? It's not that rich people problems pay better or rich people pay more for the same thing. There's some truth to that. But what it really is, it's that money means less. Money means less once you have a lot of it. And that money means less than the problem that you're having. Because if it's going to take a rich person 20 hours to figure out how to solve the problem, or it's going to take 5 grand, in that 20 hours, they can probably make a lot more than 5 grand. So they'll just get out that 5 grand. And that's really that's really how that dynamic actually works. It's not that the problems pay better, et cetera, et cetera. That's not a very nuanced way of looking at it. The more nuanced way of looking at it is, what is that guy's time worth? Because if that guy's time is worth more than your time, no shame in that. Just there's value that you can provide to that person, because you can say, hey, I'll spend my time on it instead. And my time's worth X, your time's worth Y. You get to get ahead. Okay, awesome. And now all of a sudden you have a bunch of money that you didn't have before, right? And like that, the window where somebody with ambition and very little skill, because you can just learn all of this stuff. There's a window to just be able to go out on your own and make a ton of money. Like, just ridiculous. It's insane. There's never been anything like it. And it's right here, right now.
Yeah, and to gain position before all of these kids that are AI native in college start graduating and already know these skills and becomes the default. I've already started to notice that, where they are like, I just read somewhere that it's 20, like the first like cohort of graduates that only knew ChatGPT, like started college when ChatGPT like released, just graduated, and they didn't do college the hard way. Like, they potentially cheated their way through college, but like the high achievers there, like the bar, they're probably way better than you and I was, because like I was top of my class. But the game was different then. What you could achieve was still very limited, but now it's, oh, they probably just did 2x what I was doing, or a factor of more. Like, and yeah, anyone listening, what a great time. So what, like, maybe what's your advice to like listeners? Because, okay, if we know that this wave's ending, and
Uh,
5 years from now, all the things are super cool and you can make money off of right now, it's going to dry up because it's going to become normal eventually. It's inevitable. Like, everyone's expected, like, to use AI for a first pass of a strategy doc or whatever. Like, how are you positioning like yourself? And then maybe like, how are you coaching your clients on not being caught flat footed when the wave ends?
yeah. So my specific strategy, and I'm just going to be like completely transparent and honest about what I am looking to do, is right now it is a seller's market, right? But very soon it is going to be a buyer's market again. And the best way to navigate that period of time is to sell enough to become a buyer yourself and then become part of the buying class, right? That is the best way to navigate. And so, what I'm meaning by that is, right now the opportunity is abundant for, there's businesses everywhere that are looking for some kind of AI implementation. If you can be the guy to go in there and do the AI implementation, whether that's in your own company and you're an employee, or you're somebody who's entrepreneurial minded, you're trying to do this yourself, and not necessarily just being like the AI guy that knows the AI things. You don't have to be that guy. You can solve a specific problem with AI and then brand yourself under that. You're the person who solved that problem in your organization or in your market, in your niche, whatever, right? If you can become that person and you can get enough business so that you can get into the market of acquiring businesses that are already cash flowing, then when that market dries up, you can just buy the companies that already have the people who are already native. And so you have to get ahead of the game. Right now is the time to get ahead of the game. And so if you can, and for example, I have a product called Autonomy Books, right? And so what we're doing with Autonomy Books is we are automating a lot of the tedium related to bookkeeping, accounting, et cetera, et cetera. And we are primarily targeting CPA organizations, people who do more nuanced financial services. So like tax reconciliation, stuff like that, right? Because they have to do all this accounting anyway, but they have to do that. That is their tedious part in order to get to do the part of the job that is their specialty. So my perspective is, if I can take over all of that work now, and there is about to be a massive shortage in that market because the average age of a CPA is 53. So a lot of them are going to be retiring soon. I can be in a position to start buying organizations that have established books of business. And once you're in that position, it doesn't matter what's happening in the market because you're above the market now, right? And that is what I am specifically trying to do is get above the market.
Yeah, so that you could hire all those AI native grads out of school,
Exactly.
put them in your
Exactly.
business and stuff. Okay. Yeah, I think that's really cool. So, lightning round, before we get into the last line of questioning, let's take it back to okay, listener, you just got told, yeah, maybe 5 years to get in a position where you're not competing, you're a buyer now. How do you communicate with clients about what you're like when you start a client engagement and you're like trying to coach them through because this has to require a mental model reframing from the client's perspective because they probably have all this experience with consultants in the past, right? What are like some ways that you've helped frame how the service is going to be different?
Yeah, absolutely. So the primary thing is that a lot of people are operating on a model of what is the next fire to be put out. And so long as I put out fires faster than they start, I will move up. There is some truth to that because, in general, if your acquisition rate of customers is higher than your churn rate of customers, then your customer base will grow and your company will grow as a result. So there is some truth to that. But the reframe is instead of looking at what fires can I solve and how fast can I solve them, it is what is the constraint that is preventing me from growing this organization and how can I attack that one constraint? And the one thing that if you solved it, you would move up to the next level and you'd hit the next thing. And then you solve that and you move up to the next level and you do the next. So the best exercise that I do with companies is whatever their size is. I'm just like, okay, if you got 50% more clients in a burst tomorrow, what would happen? What would break? What would be the problems? What would happen? Right. And as soon as you ask that question, it's immediately, oh, we couldn't fulfill all of them. Okay, why can't we fulfill them? It's like, oh, our warehouses aren't big. And it's okay. So you would need to buy warehouse space. Do you have people for those warehouses? No, we'd need more people for those warehouses. Okay, what is your defect rate? If you scaled that and you also scaled your bad reviews, would your bad reviews become overpowering? If so, that means that there's some defects to handle there, right? And so that's where you really start to find the opportunity space.
Ah, okay. And then you eventually diagnose that it's like a data entry issue. And
Yes,
then
exactly.
and you're like, "Cool, let's tackle that first." And then they're like, "Holy shit, you fixed it. What else could we do?" And you're like, "Yeah, that's a good question." And
Yep.
you just keep the ball rolling. Yeah, like that I did that with an engineer and his boss was like, "Thanks for weaponizing him." Just using the Gemini gem to create an interview you and fill out an architecture doc. And then
Mhm.
his whole his this is what he was saying it watching the demo and I was showing it to him. He was just like, "No way. Holy shit. No way." And then that led to more, what else could we do and gaining their trust and
Mhm.
helping the engineers to see the light that like, hey, to start harnessing this, we could probably do more ambitious things. But Isaac, this has been a really great conversation. Do you feel like there's anything that hasn't been said that shouldn't be said? Wow, man, I'm tired. Is there anything that you feel like hasn't been said that should be said before we sign off?
Yeah, so the only thing that I would say is that the key, if you're looking to get ahead, a business owner, a person in an organization, looking to do your own thing, anything like that, the key to getting ahead is you want to look at the sub niches of the niches. That it's not just about the niche, it's about the one very specific, tiny little nuanced thing that everybody just has to deal with and hates, and it's like the smallest little microscopic thing. That's what you want to focus on. You don't want to try to find something big. It's, oh, this one thing takes 2 hours a day and I can make it take 5 minutes a day. And if you find the right thing in the right market and you say that, you're going to make more money than you can dream of. That's how it works.
Isaac, thank you so much for coming on the show. How can people contact you, find your work?
Absolutely. So my website is getautonomy.com. That's GETAUTONOMI. So autonomy with an I.com. I'm on LinkedIn, Isaac Hicks, two S's, one A, ISSAC. And then I do post content on YouTube, also under Isaac Hicks, 2S's 1A. So you can check out all of my work there. And then, yeah, if you'd like to work together, I'd be happy to talk to you.
Isaac, thank you so much for coming on the show. You have a good one.
Absolutely. You as well.
Hey, listener, thanks again for listening to The Way of Product. As we power down today's session on the fusion of creativity and technology, let's solidify the energy you've gotten from our dialogue today. If you've gleaned insights or strategies that could turbocharge your projects, I have a small but powerful ask. Swing by the platform where you're hearing this and leave a review. Think of it as your digital high five to us. It's a fuel that propels this content to more creative technologists like you, amplifying the impact of the shared knowledge. So until our next interview, keep pioneering and pushing the envelope. Thanks again for lending your ears and your imagination to our community. Catch you on the next download.